Developing right now on Morning News Now, diplomacy and deal-making. President Trump welcoming Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the White House and setting the stage for a trilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the latest push to end Russia's 3.5-year war on Ukraine.
We'll work with Russia, we're going to work with Ukraine, and we're going to make sure it works. And I think if we can get to peace, it's going to work.
We need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners. And we will do our best.
A strong show of support for Ukraine as top European leaders join for those in-person talks. Plus, President Trump renewing his push to ban mail-in voting. A lot of news from Washington. We'll take you there. Developing this morning, we've got our eye on Erin, the Category 3 hurricane forcing evacuations in North Carolina after slamming the Caribbean. We are tracking the storm's path, the warnings in place, and what to expect where you live. Plus, Generation IOU. New numbers show younger Americans are struggling to pay off their debt. We will check the receipts. And back to school means back to routine. That includes getting a good night's sleep. We will share some tips for a smooth transition without hitting snooze. It's starting to feel that like fall, back to school, back
a little
to routine.
bit, so it'll be 95
degrees
next week.
I know.
I'm not a kid, but I will be taking notes.
Yeah, exactly, because we are snoozers.
Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your Tuesday with us. We are going to begin our show in Washington, where President Trump is taking steps to arrange a trilateral meeting with the leaders of Russia and Ukraine in an effort to end the 3.5-year war between the two countries.
Several top European leaders joined Ukraine's President Zelenskyy at the White House yesterday. It was a show of unity aimed at urging President Trump to push Russia's President Putin for a ceasefire. The group also pressed for a commitment from President Trump to help guarantee Ukraine's security as part of any peace deal. It's something the president said the U.S. could help with while meeting with President Zelenskyy at the Oval Office. The Ukrainian leader also expressed support for a trilateral meeting. America, Ukraine, Russia, all at the same table.
There'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe. But we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
We supported the idea of the United States, of personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war. And we are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral. I think this is very good.
In a few moments, we'll speak with the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor. First, though, let's get out to Washington and NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor. So, Yamiche, yesterday's meeting between Presidents Trump and Zelenskyy was a day and night compared with that tense sit-down that we saw in February. Tell us a little more about what we heard from them and just how soon could we see this trilateral meeting?
Well, yesterday's meeting, as you said, was vastly different than what we saw in February when President Zelenskyy was literally shown the door at the White House. This time he received a warm welcome. The two men sat down, President Trump, President Zelenskyy, side by side. They talked about shared goals. It was really, in some ways, not a contentious meeting. They did also talk specifically about what Ukraine would need in order to really be able to bring this war to an end. And President Trump was very sort of accepting and welcoming of the idea that Ukraine needed to be at the table and that Russia needed to face consequences if this war continues to drag on. Now, one of the big issues here, while these meetings were productive and everyone came out saying that they were good, there's a big issue of a ceasefire. President Trump, before he met with President Putin, said that he wanted to see a ceasefire almost immediately and then wanted to see a longer-term peace deal. European leaders yesterday continued to say that they wanted that, but President Trump wavered on that and has actually changed his mind and said that he doesn't want a ceasefire, he doesn't need a ceasefire, rather, and that if a ceasefire happened, it would be good, but that ultimately he feels like a peace deal can be negotiated. So that's just one of the points of contention. We do know that there is movement toward this trilateral meeting, but before that meeting happens, there's going to be a bilateral meeting within the next 2 weeks between Russia and Ukraine, based on our reporting. Joe, Savannah.
Yamiche, and we know both Ukraine and Europe have been pushing the U.S. for security guarantees for Ukraine. Do we know at this stage what President Trump might be willing to offer?
It's a key question. it's not clear exactly what the U.S. is willing to offer, though the president as well as European leaders say that they want some sort of NATO-like security guarantees for Ukraine. Of course, a big question there is not just, of course, supplies and aid, but whether or not they would actually be defensive forces on the ground for Ukraine if there was to be even more Russian aggression. The president yesterday, in an extraordinary move and an extraordinary statement, did not rule out putting U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine. So that's a big deal. We have to watch to see sort of how this evolves. But the president essentially opening that door really is something that's striking in this moment. Joe, Savannah.
And Yamiche, we understand the president later spoke on the phone with President Putin. What came out of that? Is the president convinced the Russian leader wants to make a peace deal, especially if those security guarantees you just mentioned are on the table?
Well, it's very interesting. The two men talked for about 40 minutes after all of these meetings yesterday. And it's interesting that you asked that because President Trump, while he was speaking to the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, was actually heard on a microphone saying this: I think he wants to make a deal. Speaking of Putin, I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that? As crazy as that sounds. So that President Trump essentially signaling and saying directly that Vladimir Putin wants to essentially make a deal to try to sort of get in his good graces. We also saw a number of posts and statements come out after these meetings. I want to read to you part of what President Trump posted online. He said, I called President Putin and began the arrangements for a meeting at a location to be determined between President Putin and President Zelenskyy. After that meeting takes place, we will have a trilateral meeting, which would be the two presidents plus myself. Again, this was a very good early step to a war that has been going on for almost 4 years. We also saw a statement come out from Russia, a foreign affairs aide to Vladimir Putin, saying that President Putin and President Trump expressed support for further continuation of direct negotiation between the delegation of Russia and Ukraine. In this regard, an idea was discussed that it would make sense to examine a possibility of raising the level of representatives of the Ukraine and Russia, which is interesting because essentially what that's saying is that there could actually be direct talks between Vladimir Putin and President Zelenskyy, which had been something that we hadn't seen before. Joe, Savannah.
All right, Yamiche, thank you so much. A lot to cover there. Yamiche just mentioned French President Emmanuel Macron, who sat down for an exclusive interview with Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker. Macron said he was skeptical that Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted peace with Ukraine. Here's some of their conversation.
I think the optimism of your president is to be taken seriously. So if he considers he can get a deal done, this is a great news, and we have to do whatever we can to have a great deal being fixed, concluded. But a great deal is a deal with security guarantees and a robust peace. As far as I'm concerned, when I look at the situation and the facts, I don't see President Putin really willing to get peace now. But perhaps I'm too pessimistic. I don't see any swap in the proposal of the Russians, except a swap in comparison with what they wanted at the beginning. But let me be clear on territory. They got a lot of territories after the first phase of the war between February and summer 2022. But because the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people did organize themselves very impressively, because we organized unprecedented support, they managed to push them back at the end of the second semester of 2022. And if you take the situation between November 2022 and now, more than 1,000 days of war, the Russian army took less than 1% of the Ukrainian territory. All of us, we want peace. All of us. From day one. And this is very important. Second, all of us are very clear that we want to stop the killings as soon as possible. You can call it a ceasefire, you can call it a truce, an armistice, but we want to stop these killings. Number three, all of us, we are clear about the fact that we want a robust and long-standing peace, which means no peace without what we call security guarantees.
Our thanks to Kristen Walker for bringing us that conversation. Let's now bring in William Taylor, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Ambassador, good morning. Thanks, as always, for being with us. So this meeting yesterday between President Trump and President Zelenskyy, I mean, it was clearly much friendlier than the meeting back in February. And Mr. Trump himself, he said it was a very successful day. How do you see it? What were your takeaways from this meeting?
Savannah, the impressive unanimity, the impressive unity of the Europeans and President Trump and President Zelenskyy, that was a takeaway. I mean, that was a strong support for Ukraine, essentially a strong opposition to the Russian attacks on Ukraine. Good discussions of a ceasefire. You know, they're not quite there yet, but I think they got back to where they were a week ago. You know, a week ago, President Trump and those European leaders, including President Zelenskyy, were on the phone, and they agreed ceasefire was a top priority going into the Anchorage meeting. And I think they got back on that yesterday, or at least back toward that yesterday. It was a good discussion. And the other big thing, Savannah, was what President Macron just said, that is security guarantees. A lot of progress making that real. With U.S. support of it now. So that I think there were some steps in the right direction yesterday.
So President Trump called Putin yesterday after those talks ended, says he does plan to set up that direct meeting between Zelenskyy and Putin. That trilateral, do you think it's actually going to happen? What is it going to take?
So the bilateral first. And as Yamiche reported, the Russians indicate that they're willing to up the level of their current delegation. It would take a significant upping of that level on the Russian side. The Russians have so far only sent a historian, a deputy minister of culture to these discussions with the Ukrainians so far, sporadic as they have been. So if the Russians are now saying they're going to up the level, they got a long way to go. President Zelenskyy has said he's ready to go. He's ready to meet. And he hopes the Russians, he hopes President Putin is brave enough, he said, to show up and have this conversation. So that's the first step. If that happens, and if they make some progress, then the trilateral, Joe, that you asked about, can be scheduled. And I am sure that President Trump would love to have that and be able to bring this war to an end. That he's been talking about that since the campaign, and to his credit, he has kept the focus on that. Spent a lot of his own time. This has been the major foreign policy priority for him. He'd love to see that trilateral succeed.
Also, if we could talk about the idea here of potential land swaps and sort of some of these hard lines here, because as a condition of ending this 3.5-year-long war, Putin has insisted that Russia retains about 20% of Ukrainian territory that it now controls. Zelenskyy has pointed to the fact that Ukraine's constitution forbids him to cede any land. Do you see that as the biggest hurdle to a peace deal?
So it's interesting, Savannah. You know, the land is an interesting question, and it's an important question, but it didn't much come up yesterday. There was very little talk of territory, and that's probably a good thing. You know, land swaps, suggesting that the Russians would swap some land for the Ukrainians. Well, no, this is not land swaps. The Russians are now occupying 19% of Ukraine. And the question is, the real question is whether or not the Ukrainians and the Europeans and the Americans will recognize that 19% as part of Russia. That is formally part of Russia, acknowledge that or bless the Russian takeover of that land. And the Ukrainians will say, no, they will not do that. The Europeans will say, no, they will not do that. The Americans should say, no, they will not do that. But, Savannah, there's one nuance on that. Rather than, no one will recognize the Russian claim that for that 19% to be part of Russia. But they will acknowledge, we could acknowledge the fact that the Russians are there, that the Russians are in that 19%, and they're not likely to leave in the near future. But holding out the possibility that they could leave that. They could, like the West Germans did after World War II with East Germany. Soviets dominated East Germany. The West Germans wanted to be reunited. They said they wouldn't try to take it back militarily. And as we know, the West Germans finally got East Germany back in Germany's united. The Ukrainians know that history as well. They're willing to acknowledge that they're there. The Russians are there, but they're not going to give them claim to it.
All right. Ambassador William Taylor, thank you so much. Always great to have you.
President Trump made another headline yesterday. He's reigniting his push to change the way elections are conducted across the country ahead of next year's midterms. The president is once again calling to eliminate mail-in voting and vowing to take the action with the stroke of a pen. As NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez explains, it's a fight that will almost certainly end up in court.
President Trump is promising to lead a movement revamping the nation's election system by doing away with mail-in voting.
Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots.
Despite no evidence of widespread voter fraud, the president says he'll sign an executive order ahead of next year's midterm elections. But that would likely face legal challenges. The Constitution gives states the power to oversee elections, not the federal government. Can the president actually do this?
This is unconstitutional, first, because the Constitution doesn't allow for the president to just willy-nilly take things over. Second, the states are not agents of the federal government.
Trump says he spoke about the issue Friday with Russian President Putin.
Vladimir Putin, smart guy, said you can't have an honest election with mail-in voting.
The president has often railed against the practice.
We're the only country in the world, I believe, I may be wrong, but just about the only country in the world that uses it.
He is wrong. Switzerland, Germany, Greece, the UK, and Austria are among the 34 countries that allow some form of mail-in voting. It all comes amid new protests over the president's federal takeover of Washington, D.C.'s police department and his deployment of the National Guard.
All I want is security for our people.
Now, more Republican-led states, including Mississippi, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Ohio, are sending hundreds of new troops.
What doesn't make sense? The numbers on the ground in the district don't support 1,000 people from other states coming to Washington, D.C.
We're also learning more about who federal agents are arresting. According to the White House, about 40% of the arrests made by federal agents have been undocumented immigrants. The top categories have been drugs and weapons charges. Now, the National Guard troops are not making arrests, but the White House now says that they may be armed to protect federal buildings.
All right, Gabe, thank you. Well, Newsmax is set to pay a $67 million settlement to voting machine company Dominion. The voting company sued the conservative cable network back in 2021, alleging that Newsmax spread baseless claims that Dominion rigged the 2020 presidential election. According to a regulatory filing, the two companies reached an agreement on Friday, which will avoid what was expected to be a high-profile jury trial. Well, in a statement, Newsmax said it, quote, stands by its coverage as fair, balanced, and conducted within professional standards of journalism. This is the second multi-million-dollar settlement the cable network has agreed to pay in an election defamation lawsuit.
Authorities released chilling new surveillance video from a mass stabbing last month in Michigan. It shows the moment that a man ran through the aisles of a Walmart and violently stabbed nearly a dozen shoppers.
NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa spoke exclusively with one of the victims, and we do want to warn you, the video and images are graphic and disturbing.
Watch as the suspect with the green backpack sneaks up on his first victim, the woman in black. He appears to throw her to the ground, then chase another customer. Authorities say it was just the start of last month's stabbing spree at a Michigan Walmart. The 360-degree video paused and rotated by authorities in Traverse City. The next target, this man in blue. The suspect, identified as 42-year-old Bradford Gilley, then appears to jab his right hand at that man in the jacket who goes flying. Moments later, you see Gilley run left into the pharmacy before appearing to stab someone in frozen foods. This man attacked by a display of cherries. In an exclusive interview with NBC News, victim Erin says he was shopping with his wife and 4 kids when he was attacked.
I thought I was being punched. And after the third one, I noticed that, okay, this isn't a punch. I'm being stabbed.
As a dad, as you're being stabbed, are you just thinking about your kids there?
Really, the only thing that was on my mind when I was being stabbed is like, is my wife safe and are my kids safe? And I knew that I was shielding them.
Gilley, moments later, seen running to the parking lot, attacking this woman from behind. Cell phone video later captured a crowd corralling Gilley until authorities came. Investigators say all 11 victims survived. Gillies pleaded not guilty to assault and terrorism charges. Court records show he has a history of mental health issues. Investigators releasing these photos showing blood in the pharmacy produce section near a display of Oreos. The chilling aftermath of a terrifying attack. Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
Hurricane Erin didn't need to make a direct hit to trigger a tropical storm watch for North Carolina. Communities along the Outer Banks are now being told to evacuate as the storm churns in the Atlantic.
Yeah, the U.S. Air Force sent a plane into Erin's eye wall yesterday afternoon to gather data on the storm. It has lost some of its power, but forecasters say the hurricane will grow substantially in size as it moves over the western Atlantic this week. Now, while Erin isn't expected to make landfall on the U.S. mainland, it will still fuel large waves and dangerous rip currents along the entire eastern seaboard.
NBC News national correspondent Erin Gilchrist is on North Carolina's Outer Banks, where storm preps are well underway. Erin, good morning. What can you tell us about the conditions there now? Are people taking the evacuation order seriously?
In a word, yes, Joe, people are taking the evacuation orders seriously. The conditions right now, really, I think you could call it the quiet before the storm here. We're seeing the wave action that maybe is more consistent with what we might expect at high tide in the morning here, but it is expected to pick up as the day goes on. The brunt of the storm impacts are expected Wednesday and Thursday here along the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And so officials are really telling people to be prepared for the reality of incredibly high waves here and potentially life-threatening rip currents as well. That is a warning that we know a lot of people have heeded. The visitors who were here on Hatteras Island and a little south of here on Ocracoke Island in the Outer Banks were told they had to get out yesterday. The order started on one island for Sunday night, the other order yesterday for locals, for people who live here. Some of them under evacuation orders that went into effect earlier this morning. Others have just a few more minutes, really, before they are going to be required to leave the island. At the same time, people that we spoke to yesterday as we moved up and down Hatteras Island told us that they're planning to hunker down. They're planning to stay put during the weather event that's anticipated here. I want you to hear from one woman we spoke to who says who runs a deli here, and her store is stocked up, ready to ride out the storm.
We've been through it many times, and we're accustomed to the roads flooding. And the old timers here, feel like this is not going to be the big one.
Now, the reality is, if in fact the flooding does materialize in the way that officials think, this island could be cut off. If roads get washed out, there's one main road in and out of here, North Carolina Highway 12. If portions of that road get washed out, the concern is that folks won't have access to emergency services, and they'll have to go without, potentially, Joe, for a couple of days.
Erin, when are you expecting to see the worst effects from Erin? Do we know what that's going to look like on land?
So officials think Wednesday, Thursday really is the time frame that they could see the worst effects here on the Outer Banks of the storm. And what could that look like? There's a coastal flood watch in effect right now. Again, the concern being that we could have waves of 15, 20 feet in height with being pushed by Hurricane Erin onto the shores here of North Carolina, washing out some of those roads, sending some of that flooding farther inland potentially as well. Those waves, we were down a little farther south on the island here on the beach, and we saw some homes that are up on pilings. There were already pretty high waves coming in. If they get a wave that's 15 or 20 feet high, those homes could very easily be knocked off those pilings and sent into the ocean or into the community farther. And so there's concern with those sorts of things. And then, Joe and Savannah, we have to mention the rip current here. We've already seen more than 60 rescues south on Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, rip current rescues. Their concerns are now that there could be more very strong rip currents that could drag people out to sea.
Erin, the East Coast isn't the only place with severe weather this morning. Real quick, what can you tell us about storms in the Midwest?
Yeah, the upper Midwest, the Plain States as well, dealing with lots of thunderstorms, some flooding as well. We've seen some images coming out of the Chicago area where parts of that city were inundated with several inches of water. We saw some images coming in from Minnesota, a popular tourist attraction there, a cave tourist attraction there, having, the owner said, 60 feet of water they had to shut down. And so this unrelenting summer is still marching across the United States, Joe and Savannah. There are 66 million people dealing with heat alerts of some sort as we go into today.
All right, Erin, thank you so much. Let's bring in NBC meteorologist Michelle Grossman now.
Yeah, she's keeping a close eye on Erin for us this morning. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Great to see you. And still a major hurricane. We're looking at a Category 3 status with winds at 115 miles per hour. So we're going to keep that strength, at least for the duration over the next couple of days. It's going to weaken a bit, and then it's going to pop back to a Category 3 storm. It slowed down yesterday. Winds, its forward movement northwest at 7 miles per hour. We were about 15 miles per hour yesterday. So here's the latest track. We are expecting it to become a Category 2 storm sometime early Wednesday morning. So it will weaken a bit, but still a strong storm at 110 miles per hour, nearly a Category 3 storm. Popping back up to a Category 3 storm on Thursday, Friday, Category 2, and then eventually weakening to a Category 1 storm on Saturday before it becomes an extratropical low. Notice the track is still on its way between the U.S., between Bermuda. That is good news, but Erin really laid it out for us, where we're going to see those impacts up and down the East Coast, especially in the Carolinas and parts of the Mid-Atlantic, even in parts of the Northeast with really high surf, life-threatening rip currents, and also some coastal flooding. Now, what's going to happen here is we're going to see Erin grow in size. So the wind field's going to grow, and we're going to see those increasing waves along the entire East Coast from Jacksonville all the way up to portions of Maine. And it's going to be sunny at some point. So people are going to want to go in the ocean. You really need to listen to those officials, because we're going to see some very angry ocean waves as we go throughout the next couple of days, especially Wednesday into Thursday. We have a high risk. That's that red line from Florida all the way to Maine, and we do have some moderate as well. So we're looking to storm surge anywhere from 1 to 3 inches along the Mid-Atlantic beaches, the Carolinas. We have a 2 to 4 storm surge that we're expecting, and 1 to 3 as we go further south into portions of South Carolina. There's that expanding wind field. Right now, we're looking at 400-mile tropical force winds extending from the center of Erin. But as we go throughout time, it grows in size. Now we're talking 600 miles, and that's why we're concerned, especially about the Outer Banks, because it's going to touch the Outer Banks, and that's where we're going to see the coastal flooding and the winds gusting. We're going to see winds gusting to tropical storm force levels in Cape Hatteras at the peak, 53 miles per hour, 43 mile per hour wind gusts in Virginia, and even into Maryland. Ocean City, Maryland, we're looking at winds gusting up to 43 miles per hour as well. Back to you guys.
Michelle, thank you so much.
Important info.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, high risk, the new warning from researchers about a potential link between cannabis use and the brain.
But up first, breaking news, a tentative agreement to end a crippling strike for Canada's largest airline. What we know, that's up next. Stay with us.
We're back with breaking news out of Canada. Air Canada is set to resume service today after announcing the airline has reached a settlement with its flight attendant union. The announcement brings an end to the strike on what would have been day 4. Over the weekend, 10,000 cabin crew began walking off the job, emptying airport terminals and disrupting service for hundreds of thousands of travelers. The main point of contention for the flight attendants, they are only paid while the plane is moving, not before. The union demanded compensation for work that flight attendants do both before taking off and after landing, using some U.S. airlines as a model. Details of this tentative agreement are not yet known, but union members will be given a chance to vote on their wages.
Let's get to other international headlines now. In the Middle East, Hamas has agreed to a new proposal for a ceasefire with Israel.
NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us with that and more world news in 60 seconds. Raf, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning. Yeah, the world is waiting to see if this is really a breakthrough or another false start after Hamas said it agreed to a ceasefire proposal laid out by Egypt and Qatar. The plan would involve a 60-day pause in the fighting, but not clear at this point if Israel will accept it. At least 21 people have been killed in Israeli attacks in Gaza so far today, according to the health ministry. Bolivia is preparing for its first presidential runoff since 1982 after voters decisively rejected nearly 20 years of rule by a leftist party. It looks likely that a centrist candidate who came out top in first-round voting will face off against a conservative former president in a second round on October 19th. And finally, in Sweden, the good news is on the move. A 113-year-old church is being painstakingly moved across the city of Kiruna to get it away from mining subsistence. It's being shifted only 3 miles, but the whole operation is going to take 2 days. And guys, it is giving a whole new meaning to the term moving service. Sorry.
But you don't have to.
Sorry.
You don't have to pack, though, right? I mean, that's kind of nice. Like...
That was really funny.
All right, thanks, Raph. Appreciate it.
Very cool.
Coming up, set your alarm. School's back in session, and for many of us, that means an early wake-up call. We're going to get some tips for a good night's sleep and a smooth start to the school year.
That's a terrible alarm. All right, plus more young people indulging in little treats. What's behind the trend in our weekly check-in? That's next on Morning News Now.
We're back with our weekly mental health check-in. This week, we're looking at a new study showing that as marijuana gets stronger, the risks to your mental health also increase.
We're also going to talk about how Gen Z is embracing what we're calling treat culture and whether we should all be following their lead and getting ourselves more gifts. Dr. Robbie Ludwig is a psychotherapist. She joins us with more on these studies. Hi, doctor. Good morning. Okay, we're actually going to start with a different one here, though. This is researchers in London. They looked at dozens of studies that involved what they're terming highly sensitive people, like people who are highly impacted by their environment. Like, let's say maybe like lights are too bright or someone else's mood changes and then it impacts them. Experts think that this condition actually impacts just under a third of people and that they're more likely to experience mental health problems. To walk us through this, how can you know if maybe you are highly sensitive? And do you think that information like this could lead to better treatments?
Absolutely. It's so important for therapists to consider this when they're working with patients, to see a trend if they're highly reactive to their environments or the people around them, and for individuals to study themselves and see how they react when, let's say, they're in an environment that doesn't work for them, or on the positive side, that does. And basically, we teach people how to manage their sensitivities, how to set boundaries, how to decide what's good and not good for them, and also to stress the good side. Very often, these people are highly sensitive to positive experiences and very creative.
Let's talk about this study that's looking at how marijuana has become much more powerful. Researchers found the THC content of marijuana has increased by 5 times over the past 20 years. Wow. And this is actually having a stronger effect on our brains. And some people, it's causing psychosis. So explain exactly what THC is, and should marijuana users be cutting back or stopping using the drug, especially if they're seeing any symptoms like this?
Yeah, so what we're noticing with a higher, as you said, THC cannabis level, that people are reacting with a psychotic reaction at times, which is hallucinating, paranoia, distorted thinking. And in some cases, this can trigger early schizophrenic-like symptoms. So the first thing that you want to do with this higher THC is to stop using it. In some cases, antipsychotic medications can be used for a brief period of time to manage the symptoms, and also cognitive behavioral therapy to help people understand the distortions in their thinking when they're under the influence.
Important information as this gets legalized in different places across the country. All right, Doctor, finally, mention this one. Most of us, we're familiar with the phrase treat yourself, right? Well, for Gen Z, the treats even at some point are breaking their budget. They're really kind of taking some liberties here. A New York Times article looked at how common what they're calling treat culture has become. So tell us, is treating yourself important? Like, what's the right way to do this, or any signs that maybe you're treating yourself a little too much, like maybe you can't quite handle how much you think you need to have a treat?
Listen, I used to be a huge fan of little treats, and I understand it. It's a way of like giving ourselves a gift, and it's self-soothing to get ourselves that extra coffee that's expensive, or blow dry your hair, or whatever the case may be. But if you are putting yourself in financial harm's way, so financially your budget really can't handle it, you're in a deficit, or this becomes the only way in which you can give yourself a little treat by shopping, that's something to keep in mind. We always want to have a balance. Yes, get the little treat, but the different ways in which we soothe ourselves shouldn't have to do with financially just purchasing something.
Good advice, Dr. Robbie, as always. Thank you.
All right, we all know how hard it is to get up some mornings, right? Well, while some kids might be getting used to going to bed late this summer, back to school season probably means lights out in your house. It's going to come a little bit earlier. But getting children back on that school routine can be a tough adjustment. So we have got an expert here to break it down for us. It's Dr. Carol Ash, board-certified sleep specialist, and our friend. She joins us with more. Dr. Ash, good morning. Great to see you as always. So, I mean, look, we all know, especially, isn't it funny how when you get older, all you want to do is sleep, and when you're young, all you want to do is stay up at night. But we know how important good sleep can be and how hard it can be when we're used to staying up late. Joe and I talk about experiencing this on the weekends because we get kind of out of our routine of having to get up so early. When should parents start easing their kids back onto a school-friendly sleep schedule?
Well, Savannah, this is the perfect time to be talking about it because you really want to start that transition a little early because it takes 1 to 2 weeks to really reset your clock. The clock is responsible for helping you fall asleep and get up in the morning. So 1 to 2 weeks before school start, and you want to adjust your bedtime 15 minutes earlier and your wake up time 15 minutes earlier each day. And that will really help you transition to school.
That's really good tips. And 15 minutes, that sounds manageable. And now, right? Kids,
Yes.
now that they're getting back into groove with school, with sports, with these busy schedules, just kind of put in context how important, like the benefits here of proper sleep. And the other side of that, what happens if they don't get it as they're heading back to maybe a little bit of a stressful time?
Well, Savannah, the literature is really strong on this, and we recognize now that sleep is so important for your school performance, your athletic performance. Sleep is critical for your memory, critical thinking. And when children don't get enough sleep, the consequences can really be significant. You know, ADHD, we look at hyperactivity and irritability. When you don't get sleep, that's how kids behave. And can be difficult to tell the difference. And so also chronic illnesses, obesity, hypertension, and long-term down the road, cardiovascular risk, even for our children. So sleep is a simple thing we can focus on. And there's we make it that we feel we've had a busy day, we want to stay up for that last TV, let the kids have the phone. You want to get rid of all those things. And summer can be a challenge because you have light at night, and really light stops you from falling asleep. So you want to make sure, get the electronics out of the room, no light exposure, and you want to make sure that the room is calm, quiet, and dark. That's the most important thing you can do. And there's literally, read a book to your child. And we say the 4 B's. You want to brush your teeth, take a warm bath, read a book, and then get to bed. Just simple things you could do with your child. Yeah.
It's a brush, bath, book, bed. I love it. That's really cute. I never heard that before. And doctor, that's really because it's not just about like the number of hours that they're in their room, right? There's a difference here in just quantity versus quality sleep.
Yeah, so quantity typically speaks to, how long did it take you to fall asleep? When you fall asleep, do you stay asleep, right? And you don't want sleep to be restless at night. And are you waking up too early? That's quality. Quantity is the amount of sleep. And our kids need more sleep than we think. So school-age kids are going to need anywhere from, 10 to 11 hours. And teenagers will need a little less, but they still need more than most of us are getting, 8 to 10.
Dr. Carol Ash, always great to have you with us. Great advice for back to school time. We appreciate it. Well, coming up, America in a debt dilemma with more young people than ever struggling to pay off their student loans. We're going to crunch the numbers and get you some tips on getting out of the red.
Also, federal officials fighting back against a ticket reseller over hundreds of thousands of tickets to Taylor Swift's Eras Tour and more. More on the legal fight next on Morning News Now.
We're back with the growing financial strain on American consumers. So total U.S. household debt, it topped more than $18 trillion in the second quarter of 2025. That's according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and that is an all-time high.
The majority of that debt is wrapped up in mortgages, but recent numbers show that Americans are also struggling to make student loan payments more than any other type of debt. We also learned that younger adults are accumulating debt faster than older generations.
Caleb Silver, our friend, he's the editor-in-chief of Investopedia. He joins us with more on this. Caleb, great to see you. So Gen Z adults, they saw their total debt balance increase the most last year. What is driving that up?
Yeah, 70% increase. What is driving that up? You just mentioned it, student loan debt, the resumption of student loan debt and interest on those loans. That's a big part of it. Also, salaries, especially for younger generations, have not increased at the rate that we've seen interest payments or APRs on credit cards rise. And also, we just have things are just more expensive. Call it inflation, call it rising prices for whatever. But younger people are getting into this debt spiral where their debt is becoming overwhelming for a lot of them, and there's kind of no way out unless they start to consolidate and stop the spending.
We were just talking a few moments ago about how they're buying all these little treats, but maybe sometimes they actually can't afford to do that, and that might be adding to the problem. Let's talk more about student loans. More borrowers are actually missing their student loan payments this year more than ever before. These numbers from the Federal Bank of New York found that more accounts are going seriously delinquent, nearly twice as fast as borrowers who are delinquent with credit card debt. Why is that?
Well, the government wasn't actually registering student loan debt for the past several years as we were coming out of COVID and there was a little bit of debt forgiveness or there was a installment debt so you could pay it down the road. And now the government, through the Student Aid Association and through the federal government, is now demanding student loan payback. So you have to pay them back, and they're starting to count them against your credit. If you don't pay back your student loans, they will come after your wages. If they don't come after your wages, they'll come after your tax return. So they're starting to count it again, which is why those numbers are rising. But we also have very high credit card APRs right now, around 24%, the average 21% plus, according to the Fed. And we know that once you get into that credit card debt spiral, it's hard to get out of it. So a lot of younger spenders in general are having trouble making those monthly payments, and that is putting them in delinquency. But you're also starting to see delinquency rates rise a little bit for car payments, for mortgage payments, and a rise in bankruptcies, 9% quarter over quarter around the country.
Caleb, what tips do you have for people to pay off their debt as fast as possible?
Yeah, you got to get out of the spending debt spiral to begin with, but you can consolidate your debt. You can negotiate sometimes with your credit card company for a lower APR or break up with your credit card company, get a no-interest credit card APR for at least a year to pay down some of those debts, but you got to pay down those debts. Don't just use it to spend. Or you can think about a personal loan. Pay the high-interest credit card debt first. That's the one that starts to eat into your wages, into your future earnings. That's the one that puts you deeper into debt. Pay the high one first and work your way down, but you got to control the spending, put yourself on a budget.
The last one on that list, I think, sometimes surprises people, that you can negotiate with lenders. How do you do that?
Well, you could call your credit card company if you've been a good customer and you've been paying back at least your monthly payments and say, I got to get out of this 24% APR if I can. Is there another card you can offer me? Is there debt relief you can offer me for the time being as I work my way down? Now, some credit card companies won't want you to do that, but as rates go down, and interest rates will eventually go down, credit card APRs will go down too. There'll be more competition for borrowers. You might have a chance to negotiate a lower rate or a better credit card.
Caleb Silver, great advice as always. Thank you.
More money news now. Many Starbucks workers are about to get a bigger paycheck. CNBC's Silvana Henao has that and some other Wall Street headlines. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Yes, so Starbucks will give all salaried employees a modest 2% raise this year. So the company telling Reuters it will apply to all corporate staff, workers in manufacturing and distribution, and store managers. So under CEO Brian Niccol, Starbucks, it's cut some jobs, tightened dress codes, and is trying to keep costs under control as it invests in reducing wait times and improving the customer experience in stores. You know, Apple is expanding iPhone production in India for models bound for the U.S. Bloomberg reports the company is producing all 4 versions of the iPhone 17 in India. That's ahead of their launch next month. That is the first time that's happened. Apple has broadened the number of local factories making iPhones after shifting the vast majority of production for the U.S. market from China, and that's to reduce the impact of tariffs. And Crocs and the NFL are teaming up to give fans some comfortable footwear as they cheer on their favorite team. The multi-year licensing deal will include a collaboration with team-inspired Crocs and NFL-themed Jibbitz. Now, all 32 teams will get Crocs products throughout the upcoming season, with the initial drop for 14 teams on September 18th. So there you go for Crocs fans.
There you go. That seemed inevitable. I've still never tried a pair of Crocs in my life. But
no thanks.
All right. Thanks, Savannah. Appreciate
You got it.
The U.S. Federal Trade Commission is taking legal action against a ticket reselling operation for allegedly using illegal tactics to bypass security protocols and purchasing limits. The government says that violates the Better Online Ticket Sales Act. The agency filed the lawsuit yesterday against the company Key Investment Group, which operates sites like Epic Seats and TotalTickets.com. Tickets.com. The FTC alleges that the company used fake accounts to buy more than 379,000 tickets from Ticketmaster for mega popular events like Taylor Swift's Eras Tour, then resold them at extreme markups, making millions in profits. Key Investment Group responded Monday, saying in a statement it will vigorously defend itself and arguing that this case threatens to dismantle the secondary ticket market for live events, consolidating power in the hands of the industry's largest monopoly. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos to break it down. So walk us through the FTC's lawsuit here and how the FTC claims this company broke the law.
Yeah, essentially, the FTC alleges that the defendant broke the BOTS Act, and you described the longer version of the name, by circumventing these ticket purchase limits. So if only an individual could buy, say, 6 tickets per person, what they're alleging is that they used fake humans, people that didn't exist, fake accounts, and different credit card accounts to buy tickets that avoided this strict limitation. And the FTC alleges that that was a deceptive act that violated the BOTS Act, because all they need to show is that deceptive act under another federal law, and they can get to a judgment. That's what they believe. The companies, however, are going to likely argue that, by the way, if we found a way around these purchase limits, it's not against the law just because we maybe violated their policies. That is what you might see as a defense.
But we should note this company, the Key Investment Group, sued the FTC back in July trying to block this investigation because the company said its purchases don't involve automated software or bots, so that it didn't violate the BOTS Act. The government says there's more to this than that. Explain the BOTS Act here and what it's meant to sort of cover.
So that is a bold statement, because I expect that's the kind of thing that should be relatively easy to prove in the discovery process. In other words, was this purchase from a human? Yes, it was. Well, show me the human. And if they can't show the human, if they can't establish the evidence that this was from a specific person, then arguably the government has gone a long way to proving their allegations, because that's one of the things the BOTS Act prohibits, these kinds of deceptive trade practices. And really, President Trump has made it clear that that's one of his missions, is to go after the secondary ticket market. And really, it occupies a strange space. On the one hand, as you saw the company itself said, you don't want to consolidate all ticketing power in a few different companies. But on the other hand, it's a little disingenuous, because in the secondary market, these companies are not selling for the same ticket price that's on the face of the ticket. They're marking them up massively. And if you look at the complaint, the allegations are profits of millions and millions of dollars.
Why can't we have a secondary company that comes in and sells for less?
Demand. Because market forces, Joe.
That would not be a profitable business model. All right, here's an interesting detail alleged in the lawsuit. The FTC said for one Taylor Swift concert, Key Investment Group used 49 different accounts to purchase more than 200 tickets. So where does this all go from here? When you look at information like that, is it a sign the FTC does have a strong case?
So to me, as this case moves through discovery, I go back to the basic principles, which is these are the kinds of allegations that should be relatively easy to prove one way or another, either for the defendant or for the plaintiff. In other words, if the allegations were that there were all these different accounts that were not tied to individuals, because the key is, at least under the ticketing policies of Ticketmaster, are that you have to actually be a person, and this is your ticket limit per person. Now, did they circumvent that? Did they use people that didn't exist? I expect that'll be relatively easy to prove in the course of discovery, even if we don't know it right now.
All right. Danny Ceballos, as always, thank you so much. Coming up, a little girl celebrating her birthday in a big way with the help of a country icon.
I thought it was amazing. I was like, what? I'm famous.
When we come back, we're going to show you her big moment caught on camera, now capturing hearts online. You're watching Morning News now. Let's end the hour with the ultimate birthday surprise for an 8-year-old girl whose very first concert offered up a moment she will never forget. She called it the best day of her life. Our Priscilla Thompson has her story.
You gonna sign your hat?
With her bright pink cowboy hat and birthday sign held high, 8-year-old Cadence was shocked when country superstar Brad Paisley noticed her. She thought,
is he gonna give me another guitar pick?
But then,
It's tough to be a kid, but here's what got me through it.
Paisley signing his guitar.
Learn how to play this.
before passing it to her in front of this South Carolina crowd.
I thought it was amazing.
The moment going viral.
I was like, what? I'm famous.
The surprise, a long-standing tradition at Paisley's concerts.
That's how you make a Taylor Swift.
To inspire young guitar players by showing them the power of instruments, like Paisley says his grandfather did for him.
First heartache, that'll get you through it.
As for Cadence, she's already taking guitar lessons.
Learn how to play it. I'll open for you in about 10 years.
Learning to turn it up and sing along. After a birthday gift from her first concert, sure to last a lifetime.
We'll never top that birthday, ever. It's cake and ice cream from here out.
And that was the best day of my life.
Priscilla Thompson, NBC News.
Cake and ice cream and a guitar from here on out. All right, that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Don't go anywhere, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for being with us this Tuesday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, the path to peace coming into sharper focus. President Trump now teasing a potential meeting between his Russian and Ukrainian counterparts. It's on the heels of that historic show of force from European leaders at the White House, including President Zelenskyy. He received a notably warm welcome from the commander-in-chief this time around. But how are those still under the threat of violence in Ukraine reacting to these latest talks? We're going to take you there. Also this morning, on alert, Hurricane Erin trudging up the Atlantic as a monstrous Category 3 storm. Millions along the East Coast expected to dodge a direct hit, but dangerous surf conditions and the threat of potentially life-threatening rip currents are still top of mind for many beachside communities. Our Michelle Grossman has Erin's latest track. Plus, it has been dubbed by some the Chili's economy. Hungry Americans ditching the fast food classics for more casual sit-down joints. But what's behind diners' dash to brick and mortars in the age of inflation? And later in the hour, we're slinging slang, a deep dive into the 6,000 plus new words debuting in the world's largest online dictionary. So if you've ever wondered what exactly skibbity means, stick with us to find out.
Joe, I have a special story for you that I'm not sure you know, because one day when Sam Brock was filling in for you.
I've been told, yes.
Oh, yeah. He called it skibidi.
Skibidi.
And now it's like sometimes what I want to say because it's like so stuck in my head because it was so funny.
Admittedly, I just asked how to pronounce it.
You did a good job.
I have no idea.
You nailed it.
I was about to say skibidi or something.
No.
I was about to say something else.
Okay, you and Sam need to go to lunch and talk about that.
There we go.
You did a good job.
I just like old-fashioned words. Okay, let's begin this hour with the war in Ukraine. The Trump administration says that it is making preparations for a meeting between Russia's President Putin and Ukraine's President Zelenskyy in an effort to try and broker a peace deal.
Yeah, that initiative comes after President Trump sat down in the Oval Office with the Ukrainian leader for a meeting that was far more cordial and friendly than those February meetings. President Zelenskyy expressed his support for a meeting with President Putin, while Mr. Trump said the U.S. could help with security guarantees for Ukraine as part of a peace deal. In a few moments, we're going to speak with former NATO Secretary General. But before that, let's get out to NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez with the latest. Yes, Gabe, good morning.
This was a dramatically different reception than Zelenskyy got here at the White House 6 months ago. President Trump backing off his earlier demand for a temporary ceasefire and now pushing for a permanent end to the war. Zelenskyy overnight stressing the need for concrete security guarantees. This morning, a new urgency for Ukraine's path to peace.
I believe you have two willing parties.
After his 40-minute phone call with Russian President Putin, President Trump overnight posting that arrangements are underway for a historic meeting between Putin and Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, followed by a meeting with Trump and the two leaders. Zelenskyy posting this morning, we continue coordination at the level of leaders. There will be discussions. We are preparing the relevant formats. The president saying later this morning that the U.S. will find out about Putin in the next couple of weeks, adding,
It takes, in this case, two to tango. They have to have somewhat of a relationship.
The behind-the-scenes diplomacy coming after Trump's very warm greeting and friendlier tone for Zelenskyy.
It's an honor to have the president of Ukraine with us.
Thank you very much for your efforts, personal efforts to stop killings and stop this war.
Zelenskyy this time in a somber black suit instead of the informal military attire he wore during that infamous Oval Office clash 6 months ago.
Let me tell you, you don't have the cards.
President Trump says Putin has agreed to accept security guarantees for Ukraine.
What security guarantees do you need from President Trump to be able to make a deal? Is it American troops, intelligence, equipment? What is it?
Everything.
This morning, Trump saying Europe is willing to put forces in Ukraine, but insisting there will be no U.S. boots on the ground.
You have my assurance.
Zelenskyy has repeatedly said Ukraine won't cede territory, even showing the president a battlefield map in the Oval Office. Despite Russian attacks this week, Trump's still hopeful he can broker peace by bringing Putin and Zelenskyy together.
I think if we have a trial like this, there's a good chance of maybe ending it.
At one point, caught on a hot mic while talking to French President Emmanuel Macron about Putin.
I think he wants to make a deal. I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand? I think as crazy as it sounds.
European leaders pressing for a ceasefire before any new meeting with Putin. But after his face-to-face meeting with the Russian leader last week in Alaska, President Trump says he no longer thinks an immediate ceasefire is necessary to negotiate a broader truce.
All right, Gabe, thank you.
Let's now bring in former NATO Secretary General Anders Rasmussen. He is also the founder of the Rasmussen Global, which we should mention has worked pro bono for President Zelenskyy on security guarantees. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. As we know, President Trump met with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy at the White House for about an hour to discuss this potential path to ending Russia's war in Ukraine. Are you encouraged by this meeting, especially considering how different it was from the one back in February?
Yeah, good morning. And obviously it was a warmer tone, and I would like to commend President Trump for organizing the meeting in the White House. And could this result in a meeting directly between Putin and Zelenskyy? I would really appreciate it. But let's face it, to get a sustainable peace in Ukraine, we need, first of all, to deliver ironclad security guarantees for Ukraine. Secondly, no recognition of stolen Ukrainian land. And third, no restrictions on Ukrainian sovereignty.
We also want to ask you just about the whole group that was there and what you think that meant, sort of the significance of it. We had the current NATO Secretary General. We had several other European leaders yesterday at the White House. What did you think of this show of force?
I think it's unprecedented, and it was a remarkable meeting, also showing European unity and a growing realization that Europe must step up to the plate. I think ironclad security guarantees to Ukraine would entail a lot of European troops deployed on Ukrainian soil. And in that respect, Europe has made itself indispensable. So I appreciate very much this demonstration of European unity in the White House.
You mentioned that huge issue, the ironclad security guarantees. At the same time, we know that one of Vladimir Putin's demands when it comes to a peace deal is for the Ukraine to abandon any hope of joining NATO. But if we have those security guarantees, it sounds like they would kind of almost be like an Article 5 situation. So could that be a huge sticking point here for Putin, for Ukraine? How big of a deal is this?
First of all, the most efficient and cheapest way to guarantee security of Ukraine would be to grant Ukraine membership of NATO. But, of course, that's not on the table, which I strongly regret. Second best would be to deliver security guarantees based on national commitments. I think the bulk of troops deployed to Ukraine would be European, but backed up by the United States sharing intelligence, delivering reconnaissance, surveillance, etc. So you will have a joint European-American security guarantee for Ukraine. Let me make one thing clear. We should never, ever discuss Ukrainian membership of NATO with Putin. It's not his business. It's a decision to be taken between Ukraine and NATO. We should not even raise it with Putin.
Do you believe that this meeting will happen, a direct meeting between President Zelenskyy and President Putin? And if that were to happen, are you hopeful that a resolution comes out of it?
Well, I know President Putin from several meetings, and I don't trust him. And I think it's very doubtful that there will be a meeting between Putin and Zelenskyy. But I appreciate President Trump's efforts to organize such a meeting. And if it could happen, I would really appreciate it. But I doubt. And that's why what we should do now is to strengthen the hand of Ukraine in the coming negotiations by delivering everything Ukraine needs militarily and financially.
Anders Rasmussen, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, over in Ukraine, some people are expressing cautious optimism following that meeting between Presidents Trump and Zelenskyy. But of course, many are still skeptical, uncertain about what a possible peace deal with Russia could look like. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel, he joins us now from eastern Ukraine in the middle of an active situation there, I understand. Hi, Richard. Good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. If you want to get and understand the view from here, just listen to what's going on in the city of Kharkiv right now. There is an air raid siren wailing. We heard them last night. There have been several attacks in and around this city over the last several days. And whenever there is an air raid siren, it means that there are possible Russian missiles or drones inbound toward this city, toward the surrounding area. This is why Ukrainians say that they need a ceasefire. They need a ceasefire now. They also need those long-term security agreements that you were just talking about. And it is in this context that Ukrainians are watching this diplomatic process. But I must say, Savannah, generally, when they saw their President Zelenskyy, meeting with President Trump yesterday, the reaction here has been mostly positive. And it does seem like the all clear has just been given.
Ukrainians this morning are expressing relief that, diplomatically at least, their country has broad support from Europe as President Trump tries to mediate a peace deal with Russia. In the eastern city of Kharkiv, where Ukrainians still go to work every day despite frequent Russian attacks, many appeared pleased that President Zelenskyy successfully navigated a meeting with President Trump without it backfiring again. Operating a crane this morning was Serhiy Stednik. I watched some of the summit in Washington, and it seems to me that there is some hope, he said, adding all Ukrainians want peace. But Ukrainians are still awaiting key details and have no idea what a possible peace deal would mean for their country's future security arrangements and borders. Russia currently occupies 20% of Ukraine. President Zelenskyy insists he won't give up territory, but European allies have suggested there is room to negotiate. For Ukrainians, there's also no clarity about a ceasefire, or if one is even in the works. President Trump has said it's an unnecessary step, a view not shared here.
Bombs are still arriving to cities. They're still bombing cities every day.
Just this week, Russia has targeted Ukraine's critical infrastructure, a university, and multiple apartment buildings. Even last night, as anchors were analyzing Zelenskyy's expanded U.S. summit on Ukrainian television, the reporters were forced out of the studios and down into bomb shelters, discussing the pitfalls of diplomacy while navigating the reality of a country under attack.
Ukrainians are now looking ahead to this possible summit between President Zelenskyy and the Russian President Vladimir Putin, potentially including President Trump. And this is something that President Zelenskyy has told me repeatedly that he's been pushing for since the start of the war. Joe, Savannah, back to you.
Richard, thank you very much. Stay safe.
Hurricane Erin is starting to create dangerous surf and life-threatening rip currents up and down the East Coast. Even though Erin is not expected to make a direct hit, officials in North Carolina are still issuing evacuation orders for parts of the Outer Banks. NBC's Erin Gilchrist is on those Outer Banks this morning, joins us with the latest. Erin, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. There is already a tropical storm watch in effect for the Outer Banks here. There's a storm surge watch in effect as well. You may be able to see some of the waves behind me that have been large waves crashing onto the beach here for the last several hours at least. That is expected to intensify over the next coming days. There is an evacuation order in place. Visitors to the Outer Banks islands of Hatteras and Ocracoke were already told to go. Now residents are being told they need to get off the island as well, as officials here do expect to see some significant flooding in this area. This large storm has already brought intense weather to islands in the Atlantic and the Caribbean. Hurricane Erin on an unforgiving march through the Atlantic. As the Caribbean gets soaked, the East Coast also bracing. Already feeling waves and dangerous currents, the storm fueling evacuation orders in North Carolina, while pounding Puerto Rico with heavy rain and flooding, and tearing through the Virgin Islands with vicious 65-mile-an-hour winds. For a Boy Scout troop from Wisconsin, a trip to the Caribbean now extended due to the storm.
It was mainly just, hunkering down and staying in place.
The group went to St. Thomas on August 10th for a sailing trip, but when they got word to evacuate, no flights.
It'll probably be Friday and Saturday before we get on a plane, actually.
The hurricane now moving almost parallel to the eastern seaboard, threatening states from Florida to Massachusetts with coastal flooding as well as dangerous rip currents, which have already led to more than 60 water rescues in North Carolina's Wrightsville Beach on Monday alone.
Erin is expected to grow rather dramatically in size.
The area bracing for tropical storm force winds and up to 20-foot waves pushing water into communities. Deli manager Denise Riley says she's staying put. How long are you prepared to be cut off from the rest of Dare County?
Probably a couple of weeks if we have to. The old timers here, feel like this is not going to be the big one.
Still, many of the Outer Banks under evacuation orders, beach communities getting ready during the busy summer vacation season. Now, one of the other things that we're hearing from officials here in Dare County is that apparently there's a lot of misinformation that's been going around on social media. They reference AI-generated images and videos showing people running along the beaches here with their luggage trying to get out of the evacuation zone. Those are obviously not real images. Officials are telling people to make sure they seek out the right kind of information, accurate information, go to known, trusted sources to get that info, the county's social media accounts, the National Weather Service social media accounts, and to just ignore things that they don't know that may be popping up in their social media feeds, Joe.
Scary impact of AI. All right, Erin, thank you so much. Let's get the latest on what to actually expect from Hurricane Erin.
Yeah, we've got NBC's meteorologist Michelle Grossman tracking the storm for us. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. And we did get the latest advisory, and now a Category 2 storm, technically a Category 2 storm, but notice the winds at 110 miles per hour. A Category 3 storm starts at 111 miles per hour, so it's right on the verge of being at that same Category 3 storm. Still a huge storm in terms of strength, in terms of power. The forward speed is the same, moving to the northwest at 7 miles per hour, and the track remains pretty much the same. We are looking at a Category 2 storm now, and then we do expect it to strengthen Wednesday and Thursday into a Category 3 storm, and by Friday, a Category 2 storm once again. Then we'll see it weaken as we go throughout Saturday and also Sunday as it enters those cooler waters. But notice the track here, still on track to be kind of sandwiched in between the U.S. and also Bermuda, so we will see those impacts along the East Coast, but still will not see that landfall in either the U.S. or also Bermuda. We do have tropical alerts. That's where you see the yellow. This is mainly for North Carolina and the Outer Banks, Kill, Devil Hills, Cape Hatteras, Morehead City. Those are places that Erin talked about where we're seeing those evacuations. Now, as we go throughout time here, Erin's going to grow in size. The tropical wind speed the field is going to grow in size as well. So we're going to see the winds picking up in the Carolinas and Virginia, portions of the mid-Atlantic, also seeing those increasing waves. We're already seeing that right now along the entire East Coast throughout the midweek. It's going to be sunny at some points. People are going to want to go in the ocean, but we're going to see really rough waters, high risk from Florida all the way to portions of the Northeast. Peak wind gusts, we're going to see them in Virginia, North Carolina, also portions of Maryland. Ocean City, Maryland could see a peak wind gust of 43 miles per hour. Cape Hatteras right around the 53 mile per hour. Back in the States, we are looking at hot and humid throughout portions of the Mississippi Valley, portions of the Gulf, the Southeast. We're going to see dangerous heat, hazardous heat, because we are looking at heat indices 105 to 110. We're looking at the chance for some storms along a weak cold front. That's going to stretch from portions of the Great Lakes into the plains, and we are also looking at record highs into portions of the Intermountain West also. So lots going on, but we will continue to track Erin for you, of course.
Of course. Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, this morning, Republicans in Texas are one step closer to officially redrawing the state's congressional map in their favor. Now, Democratic lawmakers returned to Austin yesterday. It was 2 weeks after they fled the state to avoid voting on a Republican plan that could dramatically impact the balance of power in Congress. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler joins us now from the Texas state capitol. Hey, Ryan, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. You got it. The quorum break is over, but Democrats continuing their protest in new ways. They're facing some severe legal consequences on their return, with at least one taking some extreme measures to resist. The standoff in the Lone Star State may be over, but the showdown over Congress has just begun. Texas Democratic lawmakers returning to Austin to cheers and consequences.
The doorkeeper will lock the doors.
Ending their quorum break, but not escaping law enforcement. Republican leaders barring the Democrats from leaving the chamber without a police escort. State agents seen in plain clothes walking lawmakers around the Capitol, a sign to watch them around the clock.
That's not American. There's nothing about this that is normal or constitutional.
The Texas House Speaker's office tells us the escorts are in accordance with House rules authorizing leadership to compel attendance. But one Democrat refusing to comply, sitting at her desk on the House floor in protest.
You're right inside these doors, but we can't get to each other because you say you're not free to leave.
Now they're showing that they have power over us, and that's why they're using the force of law enforcement.
Republicans wasting no time, passing the new congressional maps out of committee Monday night, setting them on a fast track to passage.
It's not that all my hypocritical, dishonest Democrat colleagues around here have any problem whatsoever with redrawing maps to maximize partisan political advantage. They're just angry that a Republican state is finally standing up.
Meanwhile, in California, Democrats unveiling a proposal that would trigger new maps in that state, but only if Texas moves forward with its redistricting plan.
Donald Trump sparked this crisis, and we only act if Texas breaks the rules.
Overnight, Texas Governor Greg Abbott confident the redistricting plan will pass.
The 5 Republican seats that we are adding, they are going to withstand legal challenges, and those will be Republican members added to the United States Congress.
Yeah, Democrats told they cannot leave the House floor without a 24/7 escort from an officer with the Department of Public Safety. Representative Collier saying, okay, I just won't leave the House floor. She says that she's prepared to be there for as long as it takes. Republicans think that they're going to wrap up work here by Labor Day, guys.
All right, Ryan, thank you very much.
There are new developments this morning in the death of actor Matthew Perry.
Federal prosecutors say a California woman known as the ketamine queen has agreed to plead guilty to 5 criminal charges. She is the dealer who supplied Perry with the drugs that cost him his life.
NBC News entertainment correspondent Chloe Malas is here with the latest. Chloe, good morning.
Hey, guys, good morning. That's right. Yasmin Sangha's plea agreement comes after months of her lawyer insisting that she had nothing to do with Matthew Perry's death, calling it, among other things, urban legend. Now prosecutors say that she's expected to enter a formal plea in the coming weeks, acknowledging the role that she played in the beloved actor's death. This morning, a major plea agreement announcement in the death investigation of Friends star Matthew Perry. According to federal prosecutors, 42-year-old Yasmin Sangha, known as the ketamine queen, has agreed to plead guilty to 5 federal charges, including providing the ketamine that they say caused Perry's death. Her attorney, Mark Garagos, telling NBC News she's taking responsibility for her actions. It comes nearly 2 years after the 54-year-old actor was found unresponsive in a hot tub at his Pacific Palisades home. A total of 5 individuals, including 2 doctors, have now agreed to plead guilty to a variety of federal crimes.
Prosecutors have been sending a message that doctors who recklessly prescribe drugs could be held criminally responsible.
In a statement, Perry's mother, Suzanne, telling NBC News, "Today is Matthew's birthday. We're grieving as we do every day, but we're relieved that there will finally be a resolution, and one we're hoping will lead to much more stringent controls over the use of drugs like ketamine." The actor had been open about his decades-long battle with addiction, as well as his use of ketamine to treat depression and anxiety.
Ketamine felt like a giant exhale.
But prosecutors say Sengha and the others took advantage of Perry's addiction issues in order to make money.
They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyways.
Friends co-star Jennifer Aniston recently speaking to Vanity Fair about his struggles, saying it almost felt like we'd been mourning Matthew for a long time because his battle with that disease was a really hard one for him to fight. Matthew Perry's family has created a foundation in his honor to help others who are in the same situation, telling Savannah that's how he'd want to be remembered.
Even when he was struggling in dark times, we were always proud of him. We were always proud of the fact that he kept fighting and that he made it a big focus of his life to help other people.
So, Chloe, how much prison time could she be looking at here, and how would that compare with the other defendants?
So she by far faces the most amount of prison time. And when you add it all up, the mandatory maximum is 65 years. But that's essentially life in prison because she's in her 40s. And because she took this plea deal, it's going to be significantly less. NBC News' Danny Ceballos told me last night that maybe a little over a decade in prison. When you're looking at the others, both of the doctors, Dr. Chavez and Dr. Plasencia, they're both facing about 10 years in prison. But then when you're looking at Eric Fleming, who distributed ketamine, he faces about 25 years in prison. So it ranges, and these sentencings, they're going to begin this fall. But again, she was the last to hold out, and all signs were pointing to her going to fight this in a courtroom next month, and now she's not.
All right, Chloe, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. A little later, we will take you back to Ukraine with an in-depth look at what peace might look like if a deal with Moscow is reached in the future.
First, though, after the break, fresh ceasefire hopes in the Middle East this morning. Hamas greenlighting new terms from mediators, but will Israel end up co-signing? We're going to take you to Tel Aviv next.
Welcome back. Hamas has agreed to a new proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza. The 60-day proposal from Arab mediators includes the release of half of the hostages in Gaza and Israel's release of some Palestinian prisoners. That is according to the chairman of Egyptian State Information Service. The proposal still needs Israel's approval.
This comes as the Israeli military says it is pushing ahead with a new offensive in Gaza City, despite fears that it will worsen the humanitarian situation there. Gaza's health ministry said on Monday the Palestinian death toll from 22 months of war has now surpassed 62,000.
NBC News International correspondent Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv with the latest. Matt, good morning. So first, just tell us about this latest round of ceasefire talks. What is the latest?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a new flurry of diplomacy, but this whole region has been there before, where we've seen sky-high hopes come crashing down. As you mentioned, the broader outlines of this proposal seem to be acceptable to Hamas, and they've approved it. A 60-day ceasefire, the release of 10 living hostages and 18 dead hostages. This is according to the Egyptian foreign minister, who we just spoke with in just the past hour or two. This would also mean a flood of aid into the Gaza Strip, where famine conditions are worsening. It would mean an attendant release of a specified number of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. Now, crucially, this would also mean during the first phase that Israel and Hamas would talk about a final end to the conflict, something the Israelis have so far refused to do. Here's what Badr Abdelati, he's the foreign minister of Egypt, told NBC News just a couple of hours ago.
We have a window of opportunity. We have to use it. We have to apply maximum pressure on the two sides in order to move forward. Now, as I mentioned, it's up to Israel to respond positively. And we are counting on the American side because the United States has a great deal of influence.
So we're seeing a lot of pressure from the American side, but we're also seeing a lot of pressure from the streets here in Israel. Sunday saw huge protests that organizers said numbered nearly 1 million people nationwide, along with a nationwide walkout from work. So far, though, we've seen those kinds of protests before here in Israel, demanding an end to the war and the complete release of all of the remaining hostages, even if it means not destroying Hamas. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his top right-wing cabinet members have made it clear that they will not see an end to the fighting until Hamas is completely destroyed, de-weaponized, and no longer has a political role in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, Matt, as we just heard there, they say they're counting on America, but President Trump appeared to cast doubt on these negotiations, writing in a Truth Social post on Monday, quote, "We will only see the return of the remaining hostages when Hamas is confronted and destroyed." This seems to be echoing Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's repeated aim to eradicate Hamas. How is Israel responding today?
Well, I mean, this is something that, is consistent with President Trump's position on Israel for quite a while. He has been echoing a lot of Benjamin Netanyahu's talking points, but it is remarkable that he's saying it this way because, remember, it was just a week or two ago, maybe 3 weeks, that the president actually publicly differed from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the question of famine and starvation in the Gaza Strip. He said that it looks like those pictures of kids starving in the Gaza Strip can't be fake. This was in direct opposition to what was said by Benjamin Netanyahu, who denied that there was starvation in the Gaza Strip and denied that it was Israeli policy to starve Gazans. So what we're seeing is the president now back, it looks like, in Netanyahu's camp, at least when it comes to these ceasefire negotiations, which, by the way, are being led by President Trump's own envoy, Steve Witkoff. So it looks as though the president here is also drawing a little bit of a distance from Steve Witkoff if the Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs is to be believed, that this is Steve Witkoff's proposal to the negotiators.
All right. Matt Bradley, thank you, as always, for your reporting from Tel Aviv for us.
Coming up, the push for peace in Ukraine ramping up in Washington this week.
Yeah, but might an end to the years of violence there? What might that look like? And will it last if a deal is reached? We're going to dig in a little deeper next.
We're back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with the Justice Department gearing up to share the Jeffrey Epstein files with Congress. NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor joins us with the latest. Sahil, good morning.
Happy Tuesday morning, Joe. We start today in politics with the Justice Department telling the Oversight Committee in the House that it will begin to provide documents related to Jeffrey Epstein this Friday. That's according to a statement from the Republican chairman James Comer, who issued a subpoena last month for those files after a bipartisan vote to do so in his committee. However, this means the DOJ will fail to meet Comer's deadline, which was today, August 19th, for the full files related to the sex trafficking allegations and apparent suicide of Jeffrey Epstein in jail. Comer defended the DOJ's delay, saying they need more time to redact information that could identify his victims. But the committee's ranking Democrat, Robert Garcia, saw it differently, saying the Justice Department must hand over the full documents by today, and if it doesn't, quote, it will be clear the Trump-Epstein cover-up continues, end quote. Also here in Washington, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is pushing back on President Trump's renewed effort to end voting by mail nationwide. In a statement, the New York Democrats said Trump lost the 2020 election and called vote by mail safe, secure, and reliable. He called it, quote, yet another one of Trump's attempts to silence Americans and implement Jim Crow laws across America, end quote. Trump's plan would be subject to the Senate's 60-vote filibuster rule requiring Democratic support, and Schumer insisted that would be dead on arrival. Finally, in Ohio, former Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown has officially launched a comeback campaign in 2026 for the Senate seat vacated by Vice President J.D. Vance. He will challenge Republican Senator John Husted, who was appointed by the governor to fill that vacancy. In a video statement, Brown says his campaign platform will be standing up for workers and treating everyone with dignity and respect. Now, Brown lost re-election last year to the Republican Bernie Moreno by just 3.5 points, outperforming the Democratic ticket in the process. Ohio is a red state where Democrats have been on a losing streak, but Brown will be counting on once again overperforming his party and what historically should be a better environment for Democrats in 2026 to overcome the headwinds. And that is a look at what's making news in politics this morning. Joe?
All right, Sahil, thank you so much. Let's return now to our top story and the high-stakes discussions that took place between President Trump and European leaders as they try to find a path to peace in Ukraine. NBC News chief international correspondent Kira Simmons has a look at how that peace could be maintained once the fighting stops.
On the road to ending a war, getting both sides to stop firing is just step one.
Everybody around this table is in favor of peace.
At the White House, leaders from across Europe meeting with President Trump and Ukraine's President Zelenskyy to discuss what a post-war Ukraine could look like.
All of us want to finish this war.
French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Sunday reaffirming their coalition of the willing would be ready to deploy a reassurance force once hostilities have ceased in Ukraine. Both leaders have signalled willingness to send their own troops. President Trump asked twice if security guarantees for Ukraine would involve US troops on the ground.
But we're going to work with Ukraine, we're going to work with everybody, and we're going to make sure that if there's peace, the peace is going to stay long term. They are first line of defense because they're there, they're Europe, but we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
An international presence in Ukraine could entail what European leaders have called a reassurance force, providing additional security to the country if and when fighting stops along the roughly 600-mile front line.
The Europeans would provide some armed forces to give Ukraine an additional sense of security, but not necessarily march along the barbed wire of a kind of a hypothetical front line.
Several NATO leaders saying Article 5-style protections for NATO troops in Ukraine are on the table, though full NATO membership was not part of this round of public discussion. Under Article 5, an attack by Russia against one nation's forces is an attack against all.
And I really feel that we can, I think, with the right approach, make real progress, particularly on the security guarantees, and your indication of security guarantees, of some sort of Article 5 style guarantees.
In a statement, a spokesperson for Russia's foreign ministry rejecting the idea of NATO's troops in Ukraine, calling it fraught with uncontrollable escalation and warning of unpredictable consequences. Putin warning European nations not to interfere in the peace process.
They will not make any attempts to use some backroom dealings to conduct provocations to torpedo the nascent progress.
Yet President Trump saying Putin would make concessions on Ukraine's security.
In a very significant step, President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine.
We don't know what Putin and his team will come back on. They'll want the reassurance and stabilization of Ukraine to be as financially costly an endeavour over as long a period of time.
Ukraine and its allies now working toward their image of a just and lasting peace, a discussion both hopeful and hypothetical. Keir Simmons, NBC News.
Coming up, some of America's top money voices are calling it the Chili's economy. When we come back, why fast food staples like McDonald's or Wendy's are getting beat out by more casual sit-down restaurants, and where hungry diners can have a night out on the town without breaking the bank. That's next on Morning News. Back now with a look at how schools are embracing a new era of learning with the help of artificial intelligence. Despite concerns about protecting students and academic integrity, more teachers are now praising AI's potential role in education. The Miami-Dade School District is partnering with Google using its AI platform in high schools. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch went to take a look at how it works.
As many kids head back to school, artificial intelligence is also returning to some American classrooms.
But then you can actually see the visual come to life.
In Florida's Miami-Dade County, one of the country's largest school districts is embracing AI as both an administrative aid and as a teaching tool.
Our kids are learning 24/7. So AI responds to this demand that we have in this world for quick information, quick knowledge.
To achieve this, Miami-Dade has partnered with Google, offering the company's Gemini AI to high school students. Google says the school district receives the company's AI technology for free, along with other services, but pays for additional features and security. Google showcasing the South Florida School District students in this video.
It's difficult for me when it comes time to put responses on paper. So I also use it as an assistant essay writer. I'm able to have Gemini explain it in a way where it's easy to understand, put a logical structure to it, so I'm able to write it more efficiently.
The school district superintendent says AI can also help native Spanish speakers get English translations in real time.
You can actually ask it to start creating for you.
Computer science teacher Michael Sakowitz and this group of students simulated how he's incorporating AI.
What do you think the most exciting potential benefit of AI is in the classroom?
I definitely think it's being able to really zone in on
individualized learning.
It gives me more time to walk around the classroom and help those individual students.
Language arts teacher Noelle Walker says AI can help students get immediate writing feedback and learn vocabulary.
If I told them to do this at home, they would likely have looked it up anyway. So this way in class, they can show me where they've pulled it, now take this information and create something bigger. They're moving up in complexity.
But the rapidly evolving AI field has also raised new concerns about protecting children. Google says its education AI has enhanced protections.
All of the data that's used in a classroom environment stays within the school. We don't train our AI on the data.
And how can we know how much AI is too much, possibly preventing students from developing important skills by spoon-feeding answers?
We build features like guided learning mode in Gemini, where the AI chatbot doesn't just give a quick answer, but actually engages the student in a back and forth dialogue, more like a Socratic conversation to ensure the students are learning deeply.
But students have to opt in to guided learning. And Miami-Dade's school superintendent says it's important for students to double check those answers, since even AI can make mistakes.
AI only augments what the teacher can deliver, what the teacher can provide. It does not replace the importance of the connections, the relationships that exists between a student and a teacher.
Just one type of relationship that's evolving in an AI world. Jesse Kirsch, NBC News, Miami.
Americans are increasingly turning to casual dining restaurants despite the rising costs of dining out. The Wall Street Journal is even calling it the Chili's economy. This all comes as fast food giants like McDonald's and Wendy's struggle. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung has the takeout.
Hey there, it almost defies logic. In an economic moment when rising prices might otherwise push people to cut costs by cooking at home, foot traffic appears to be up at many familiar casual dining restaurants. And it's not just about the value meals. They're offering some diners, telling me, the ambiance too. Americans are hungry for dining in.
Cheesecake Factory is a 10 out of 10.
I don't care if I have $1 million. I'm going to eat at Red Lobster.
While KFC, Pizza Hut, and Popeyes all reported same-store sales falling, full-service casual restaurants like Olive Garden and the Cheesecake Factory reported sales increasing. With inflation at restaurants outpacing already sky-high inflation over the last 5 years, consumers are looking for big deals to draw them out for a meal. At Chili's, it's a $10.99 value meal bringing in customers.
I shop at Lidl and Aldi, convenient places, and still I'm spending up to $50.
It's still expensive
for a one-night meal. So the fact that this comes to $40 with drinks, with food, and leftovers, it's just more convenient.
Oh, and there's also the ambiance. Have you guys seen those memes like from The Office?
I feel God in this Chili's tonight.
Like our only plan of the day is like the Chili's strip.
Chili's president Kevin Hochman saying consumers these days want more bang for their buck. What are consumers looking for when they decide to go out and sit down for lunch or for dinner?
Number one, they're looking for a great value.
What is interesting is this is happening at a time where people are balking even at fast food restaurant prices.
People are posting their receipts online for their combo meals. And the combo meals could be $15, $18. At the end of the day, consumers are frustrated with fast food prices. We've kind of slid in with a little bit of a niche right now in casual dining.
And it's not just Chili's. Analysts say casual dining brands like Applebee's, Texas Roadhouse, BJ's, and even Red Lobster, which filed for bankruptcy last year, are seeing rebounds.
The first thing they did is improve operations inside the restaurants. The second thing that they did was market the value offers that they had. Or they came up with new ones that resonated with consumers.
Meaning it's not a stretch to say it's a casual dining boom. And a recent survey says that for many diners that are going into the restaurant, ambiance is just as important as the food itself, meaning that restaurants that can offer both in addition to good value are going to win in this type of inflationary environment. Back to you.
All right, Brian, thank you. Coming up, the TikTok generation making a dent on the way we speak to each other. When Morning News Now continues, how viral doses of internet slang like, I don't even know how to pronounce it, skibbity, is that what we decided it is? All right, and Delulu actually made it into the world's largest online dictionary. Spoiler alert, we don't know what skibbity means, but maybe we'll find out. Stay with us. We're back now with a story that has a lot of people here in New York very excited. The return of a beloved tradition, Shakespeare in the Park. NBC News correspondent Kaylee Hartung got a backstage look into this summer's production that has already become one of the hottest tickets in town. Kaylee, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Joe. That's right. This Thursday, a who's who of Hollywood will premiere a new interpretation of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night right in the heart of Central Park. The Delacorte Theater has been home to free Shakespeare productions for over 60 years. And after closing down in 2023 for some much-needed renovations, they are ready to turn the stage lights back on for very eager audiences.
I never hurt you. I bespoke you fair and hurt you not. Who has made this happen?
These A-list stars are ready to take center stage under the stars in a contemporary take on Shakespeare's beloved comedy, Twelfth Night. Tony winner Jesse Tyler Ferguson, Emmy winner Sandra Oh, and Oscar winner Lupita Nyong'o are among the latest in a long list of legendary actors to take on the challenges of performing outdoors on the famed Delacorte stage.
Our first attempted run through, it drizzled the entire time. And being in the rain, it was completely destabilizing. I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Have there been any visits from raccoons?
Oh, they're all there.
They're all there. They're with us backstage.
Yes.
Unpredictable weather and New York City wildlife, all a part of the charm of the unique opportunity.
It seems like a must-do, you know, and it was a bucket list for me to perform in one of them. And I so luckily get to do it with my best friend directing, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to shout out your brother.
No, obviously.
Lupita's younger brother, Junior Nyong'o, is making his New York stage debut in the show. The siblings play twins Sebastian and Viola.
I had a thought about this play like 8 years ago. I don't know, I was like, oh, it would be kind of cute to do this together, you know, but just like in a pipe dream kind of way. I wasn't really thinking about it in concrete terms.
The depth of a real, true relationship plays out on stage in such a gorgeous way.
For a play that was written 400 years ago, what themes hold up?
Shakespeare is sturdy enough to take on new meaning and new themes, and we have themes of immigration, we have themes of celebrating the non-binary.
The script has been trimmed, the costumes are dazzling, and the vibrant stage design is anchored by bold lettering.
The full title of the play is 12th Night, or What You Will.
It's an invitation for interpretation. We've taken great liberties with this play. And so this is, I think, conditioning an audience for them to be able to take from the play whatever they want.
Twelfth Night marks Jesse's 7th Delacorte show, but his first since the theater's $85 million remodel, which modernized the exterior, seating, and backstage area.
How different does this look today compared to when you were first here?
These were cinder block walls. They were always a little damp. It wasn't even fully an indoor space. If there was rain, there was a lot of leaks.
But the soul of the theater remains.
It feels like coming home, honestly. I mean, this is where I made my debut in New York in 1997. I got so excited, I said the wrong line. So my very first line out onto a stage in New York City was the wrong one. I still feel scared to do Shakespeare.
You do?
Yeah, every time I'm like, oh, this is where they're gonna find out that I'm actually not very good at it.
Hello, welcome to the Delacorte Theater.
Outside the theater, there's another spectacle taking place. Hordes of fans waiting in line for their chance for a free ticket to the show.
I joined the line this morning at 4:45 a.m. I've been to the Delacorte several times. I have never seen a line like this, though.
The cast isn't taking the audience's commitment for granted.
Everyone is bringing their full self to give to the audience in the city of New York. They come in with a generosity of spirit that we aim to match.
It bears repeating. Admission is always free. You just have to put in the time. Tickets are distributed at noon each show day. So those folks you just saw, Joe, they were waiting in line 4 hours. That was just for preview shows.
Right. Well, Shakespeare plays are usually like 7-8 hours.
Anyway, yeah,
Very
exactly.
long. Make a day of it, but New Yorkers love that Shakespeare in the Park. And
The show opens this Thursday and it runs until September 14th.
Very cool. There's a fun look. Thank you so much, Kaylee. Appreciate it. All right, let's end this hour with some new additions to the world's largest online dictionary. That's right. Cambridge Dictionary has added, get this, more than 6,000 words this year. 2 of those words are slang terms made popular by social media, including skibbity, which we've been talking about all hour, and I still don't know what it means. You may also be familiar with the trad wife trend, Gwendolyn Nichols joins us now to explain what's happening to the English language. She is the publishing manager at Cambridge Dictionary. Gwendolyn, good to have you with us. So let's start right there. Those two terms I just mentioned. What do they mean? And just talk about how you decide what words you're going to add to the dictionary.
Well, I sure do love talking about how words get in the dictionary. Skibbity is a term that can mean cool or bad, and it's an intensifier. So it has entered into more general usage with other new words like riz. So you can say skibbity riz, which means somebody is a really great flirter, or you could say skibbity Ohio riz, which means they're pretty bad at it. Tradwife is from, of course, this phenomenon that actually started about 10 years ago or so, very niche within certain influencers, but really started to gain traction during the pandemic and now is part of the cultural discourse.
What other slang terms are you adding this year?
Well, we have got inspo, which is also delulu. So these are examples of shortening, which is very typical of what slang does. If you remember, like I do, the 70s with rad for radical. It's not a new phenomenon, right? But it is the words that are being coined now. Delulu for delusional, coming out of K-pop. And of course, inspo for inspiration.
And it looks like we also have mouse jiggler there, device or software used to make it seem like you're working when you're not.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Well, we also have words not just from slang, but also from what's happening in the world. We have, I'm sorry, we have forever chemical, for instance, that. Yes, so that we're talking about what's happening with the environment. Broligarchy made it in. We know how relevant that one is. Even Gen Alpha itself as a term is new this year.
Obviously, when I was younger, my dictionary was a physical one that you bought and you had on your shelf. And I have to imagine that kept the bar fairly high for what would make the cut. How big of an impact has the internet had on the language and the dictionary in recent years? Well,
particularly on the dictionary, what it does mean is that you're not making that choice. If something goes in, something has to come out because it has to fit in a book. So now what we do is we look more at a tipping point, as it were. So a really good example is Delulu, where we've been tracking it since it first appeared, you know, within that K-pop and just very much on the Instagram space and moving into TikTok, where if the Prime Minister of Australia is basically accusing people of being Delulu with no Salulu, then it's gotten into the wider discourse, and that's a time when it starts to get in.
Huh, fascinating. All right, so this segment was the good skibbity, right?
Yes,
right.
Absolutely. I hope
this
was a skibbity segment. Yeah.
All right. Gwendolyn Nichols, good to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much for talking with me.
That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.